Ho ho! Oh yeah, baby. What is up? What is up? This is Gideon Williams, your co-host of the Auto Trends podcast. I have a down soldier,
He's like,
Lucas Welk. He woke up. I think he either got punched in the eye or he got stung by a bee. But he
that's not
woke
fun.
up. No, he woke up with so many excuses. I just told him to get out of my face.
You should have made him join. He could have joined with like an eye patch. It would have been a story.
I told him, man, you're a pirate. I told him. Dude, just
Or
be
he
a
could have just
pirate.
like put like a racing helmet and just sat here. Like,
I told him, he lives in the Philippines. He's got a house in Canada and the Philippines.
oh, that's interesting. That's a fun fact.
Yeah. Yeah. He sends me a picture. I actually should download it and show it. He looks like he went through the jungle and got beat up.
Man, that's no fun.
I said,
So
"Dude,
he's in the Philippines right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then you're like looking at like, where do I get?
I told him, I said, dude, just come on, man. It's Sam Russo.
Yeah, we don't care. He can wear glasses.
Yeah, I said, dude, just come up, put a bag over your head.
I would have been more funny. Or we get like one of the inflatable dinosaurs and to just sit here in an inflatable dinosaur costume.
I'm gonna tell him Sam Russo is asking for you to join with a bag on your head. Let's see what he does.
Or you could do like, let me see, just have like half his face in the thing.
Anyhow, folks, we are very excited to have an incredible special guest, an industry legend. There's a lot to introduce, and I'm not going to waste all my breath and energy on the list of achievements. But today is a very special episode. We have Connect coming up. We have the biggest part of our industry around data. Data is king. There's people that are lost. There's people that think they know what they're talking about, but they don't. And today we have a very special guest, minus Lucas, who got stung by a couple of bees, Sam Russo with the Pivotree.
Thanks, Gideon.
Was that good?
Yeah, that works. I'll just have you introduce me at my at every event at Connect. That'll be great. Be like, I have my I forget what they call that, but like the guy that introduces everybody. But yeah, I am Sam Russo. So if you don't know me, not everybody knows me. I know that's a shocker, but I have 18 years in automotive. I've spent the last 8 years on the data side. I started out at a manufacturer, and then I've worked at 2 major retailers, and I've worked for a third-party data solution for Major Motor Oil. And now I am basically head of industry over here at Pivotree. And if you don't know what Pivotree is, that's all right. Not everybody knows what Pivotree is. The name's not super obvious, but what we are is we are a strategic partner in the industry. We have expertise in data management, supply chain, and commerce, which are all the things that you need to get the right part at the right time to the right place. Good enough?
What an interesting time in our industry.
Yeah, I'm like super excited to be here. I think some people would say it's a stressful time, but if you look at it, if you take a nod from Simon Sinek and say everything is exciting, it's exciting. So when I'm at Pivotree, what's exciting about me at Pivotree is I've finally gotten to dive into the heavy duty side of the industry, whereas I predominantly have been a little bit on the performance side because my husband does own a performance shop here in Atlanta. So that's why you see like the F1 car behind me is I've spent the past 18 years as an enthusiast. So I didn't touch on that, Gideon. Like I've spent the past 18 years throughout my time as an enthusiast. So I've owned every Subaru STI model there is. I've blown up a couple engines. I've been on the track and in the hills on the winding roads. And luckily enough, I've turned it into a career. So I'm on the data side. But the exciting thing at Pivotree is I do get to get exposed to heavy duty. And I've spent the past 18 months really getting to know these guys on the heavy duty side, taking all that I've learned on the automotive aftermarket, on the light passenger side, and kind of seeing where they're at. So the exciting part of that is this industry is really fragmented. And so when I say fragmented, I say not in the traditional that you think it is, but like, I don't think the impact is EVs. I think the impact is how consumers are shopping for products and how 2020 really impacted how we shop for products. It's not only how Gen Z shops for products, but it's how we all shop for products ever since what happened in 2020. And so the one thing that happens with that when you're trying to do that is we are fragmented in our digital maturity. So if you look at the OEMs are probably, I mean, debatable, but they're probably 10 years ahead of the automotive aftermarket when it comes to their digital maturity. So they have the big money.
What do you mean? Well, hold on. What do you mean by that? Their digital maturity.
So their digital maturity. So digital maturity for me is like where you're at in your digital journey from like a technology standpoint. So if you go from like the highest digital maturity, they have a data strategy, they have data governance, they have the fancy PIM systems. They're using the fancy PIM systems the way they should be. And a PIM system is a product information management system.
Yeah. There you go.
They're probably already integrated in cloud. They already have the APIs, the microservices. What they're looking at ahead of them is how do we now leverage generative AI, which is great for them because they've got that digital maturity. I would say they're at the high maturity level in their digital journey. If I go to them, they probably don't need me so much because they're like, hey, we've already got our teams. We already know who's doing. We've got like the industry leaders. And that's where the OEMs are kind of at because they've got the money. They're ahead of the trends. They've got software-driven vehicles, like data is on top of their mind, right? Then you go to the automotive aftermarket and you go to the light-duty passenger. So when you're looking at them, I'm looking at like the retailers that are doing the heavy maintenance, whether it's B2C, B2B. So you're looking at, when I say, I always say the core four. So the core four in the light-duty passenger is going to be Napa Auto Parts, AutoZone, Advanced Auto Parts, and O'Reilly's. And then you still have other ones. You have like Pet Boys and all that. But those are my core four. Those are the ones that we're all watching on the reports, and everybody watches them as they go through, whether it's the Jeffries reports or the 2024 fact book that AutoCare puts out. We're all looking at those retailers. In those retailers, they're about, I think a couple of years ago, we were like really far behind in our commerce journey, but those retailers also are a little bit digitally more mature than heavy duty. So those retailers are looking at cloud. So they've started doing the cloud migration journey. So last year, I would say as soon as last year, especially where I was, when I was engineering manager at Genuine Parts Company, we were building the cloud. The cloud is the future. We're building microservices, no longer storing on-prem. Everything's in the cloud. We're trying to get to that real-time data, right? Same thing goes for other retailers. I can tell you without saying names that those other retailers are also moving to the cloud. Again, we're in the passenger car, light truck. The major retailers are moving to cloud. So some of those may fall over to the major manufacturers, which would be like the SMPs, the Gates, the ones that have kind of like that. I have a colleague that told me once, he's like, you can achieve anything with enough time and money. So money being the factor.
Yeah.
And so some of those bigger guys really have the money to drive that digital maturity for themselves and jump onto that cloud journey, and also invest in the right off-the-shelf solutions. So whether that's a commerce solution, they're moving away from homegrown systems. This goes for passenger car, light truck.
I've seen that a lot. A lot of people are moving away from homegrown.
Yep. So this is going for passenger car, light truck, and heavy duty. Is we all have these homegrown systems that worked really well when we were doing that paper phone call kind of transactional management of selling products. And now it's moving to millennials. I'm a millennial. I think you might be a millennial.
I am. I'm 100%. Yeah. Well,
I'm a millennial.
What is that supposed to mean?
I was like trying to feel out. I'm like, I think we're in the same age range. Millennials. So it's not just Gen Z, but millennials are moving up into those leadership roles. Like we're driving the force, and that the Gen X is kind of moving more higher up. And we want to we weren't raised on digital devices like Gen Z, but we have integrated with them. Like that's where we function. And so when you go into a lot of these warehouses and you go into the stores, they want to function off a tablet. It's not the paper catalogs. God forbid you make us look at a green screen, because I'm going to be like, all right, Grandpa, I don't know what I'm looking at here. So that's where we're at. We're in a digital age. And so when I say digital maturity, it's where you're at in that journey. So are you still functioning from Excel sheets and printed catalogs and paper? You're at probably like a lower digital maturity. Or are you farther in the middle where you have the PIM system, you have the commerce system, you have the WMS or the inventory management system? Like, where are you at in that? That might put you in the middle. You might still be on-prem, but you've got those tools in your wheelhouse and you're trying to get the right products to the right place, right? And then your advanced digital maturity is the ones that are building the microservices. They're already leveraging AI. They probably have data scientists on their team, and like they're really data-driven culture, and they're letting data drive their decisions. They're letting data drive the inventory they carry, how they maximize shipping and shipping costs to get the right product to you, whether it's through inventory management, where if you have multiple DCs, which is a distribution center, you can leverage AI and advanced technology to tell you where's the best place to get that product at the right time to get it to the customer the quickest. So that's where you're at in the digital maturity. And in this industry, doesn't matter whether it's light duty or heavy duty, it's very fragmented. And I find that exciting.
What do you think the implications are for an organization, whether you're a manufacturer in light or heavy, or even a distributor at some level? What do you think the implications of not investing in this today, or at some point in the near term?
I think the implications are you're going to get left behind.
To some degree, you have to.
Yeah. So there's a whole committee through the heavy duty e-commerce committee, and they did a call to action at the MEMA Tech conference that we were both at. Was trying to really rally the heavy duty industry, but it goes for any industry really, that you need to get on this train. So we saw this, Gideon.
Well, I mean, it's not even about getting on the train. I think it's about being what is the most effective and efficient for the organization, because we're impacting our consumers at the end of the day.
We are. And it's interesting when you have those conversations, because you and I understand that it's like, hey, I just want to get the bare minimum data to be able to sell more of your products. And the heavy duty industry is having difficulty even getting bare minimum, much less like an image or like features and benefits or bullet points.
Hold up. I've been blown away. I've been in this industry just under 10 years. I got in the industry by a stroke of luck, but introduced to David Honig, the president of the Parts House. And then I was like, I sucked in, just like, you know, I was like,
once you're in here, we stay here. So,
oh my gosh, I was like a fish in the sea, and and I was like, oh, and then here I am, and now, you know, and it's just like ridiculous. Is it because like we come from like in the 70s and 80s and everything was like handwritten, and it was like, well, you have to go to this one guy to figure out what part fits your vehicle, or like what's the holdup? It blows my mind. I deal with this stuff all day, every day, and catalogs some of them are so bad, they're awful.
I think it's like, more word of mouth. I think it's word of mouth. There was like maybe 15 years, or no, now it's like, goddamn. So maybe like 23 years ago, if you look at the emergence of a bookseller, e-commerce bookseller, Amazon, and they emerged with the boom of the internet, and then we went into the boom of online selling. And so I always reach back to that, because back then, if you think about it, that looked like if we put each other, like we were, you know, running around playing flashlight tag, but if we put ourselves in those seats, like if you would look at that and be like, there's no way anyone's going to ever sell car parts online. It would be the same way as us looking at, like, I still can't wrap my head around how we're going to leverage meta or like the multiverse and like alternate reality to sell car parts. I'm starting to see it, but at the same time, like if I talk to like a Gen Zer, they're probably like, oh, that's where we're going to sell car parts. Like they're probably gung ho, like being like, that's where I want to buy car parts, is be able to see them. That's
I think like you're accessorizing, right? Because the meta in that universe is all about perceived reality. It's all about an emotional kind of buy. If my freaking Honda goes down and I need an alternator, I'm not going to go, oh, okay. No, I got to get it going today, like yesterday. Yeah. But I think everything's around them an emotional buy. I think that's what like.
Yeah, they do want the experience. You want the experience. You want the personal touch. So real quick on the why is there like a lag? I think it's because back then we really were convinced, and I could see it, convinced like in the boardrooms, we're like, this is not going to impact us. There's no way you're going to be able to sell car parts online. How would that even work? How are you going to find the right part without having a technician actually look at your car? And then you come over to like maybe 15 years later from that, and now we went through that big data phase where it was like, some of us have e-commerce sites. Some of the major retailers started standing them up, or we were selling car parts through other marketplaces, right? But we started just like, let's gather all the data we can. So then we went through this big data thing. That was the buzzword. Like maybe 10 years ago was big data. So then
now got really deep, right?
Yeah. So the standards have been around since like the 90s. And then it kind of
They
like,
weren't
it's
really
like
followed.
evolved. No, I mean,
Kind of
are
were.
they really followed now?
Yeah.
But I mean, that's what it's there for, is because it started seeing the centralized focus on data, and that we needed to be able to exchange data in a standardized format to increase our time to market. In that one, it was more so like in the past, like if I look back the past couple of years, Aces and Pies was more so to increase our time to market. If we all use the same format for exchanging data, we would be able to increase our time to market within these retailers. That was the dream. So that's, you would hear me say that on my like little soapboxes on LinkedIn, is the standards are today, and I say today, today are exchange format. It's for exchanging the data. It's like a vehicle. It's a vehicle for exchanging the data, and it does not regulate or govern the people that are in the vehicle, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Movement from point A to point B. It's so you can ultimately transact with more, I guess, partners or retailers or e-tailers in a quicker fashion to ultimately drive your brand forward in a manner that you earn market share in that kind of digital era.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I mean, when we look at like like when we think of Pies and Aces, so all right, we're going to ACPN and Connect, and everyone, there's going to be everyone there that for the most part that believes that they're involved in the data at some level, right? What's the most important thing around the Pies and Aces? Like explain to our like listeners who just have no clue what Pies and Aces, which I'd say 99% of people in the universe probably have no idea, maybe even more, unless you're kind of really deep in it. What is
Unless
Pies
you're
and
in it, yeah. So Aces and Pies is the industry standard governed and run by the Auto Care Association, which is more predominantly a data standard for the automotive aftermarket here in the North America. So North America and LATAM. Anywhere outside of here, it doesn't really matter to anybody else. But for North America, Latin America, Aces and Pies is the industry standard. And it's an industry standard for exchanging data. And I always say exchange in bold letters. It is not governance of that data. Now, there is some governance because there are some set values, predominantly in ACEs. So ACEs is your fitment-driven data. ACEs is everything fitment to product. So if you go to look up a product on an e-commerce site and you type in your year, make, model, that data has coming from the ACEs file from the manufacturer who has associated those year, make, model fitment data to those products. Now, the way that gets married to product data is its trusty partner, which is Pies. And one thing I do want to point out here, Gideon, because I think it's a misconception, is you can have Pies without Aces. You cannot have Aces without Pies. So there is an if there. So just because you have Pies doesn't mean you automatically have to have an Aces file. You don't have to have fitment data. Now, I will tell you that some of your major retailers may fine you or scold you for that if you don't have fitment data, and ultimately you won't have a driver in sales because your products won't come up in search. But there's nothing that says you have to have Aces to have Pies. Now, you do have to have Pies to have Aces because a product has to be created and originated in a Pies file.
The enrichment piece.
Because Pies is product information exchange standard. So P for product. And then sometimes I tell people with Aces, it's not as obvious because I think if I had to go back on a history lesson, I would assume Aces got created first because it's the aftermarket catalog exchange standard. So it has nothing to do with fitment data. You could change it to like application catalog exchange standard, but I do A for application, which is like another word for fitment because it applies to these year, make, models. And then you have P for product, which is Pies. And Pies is where I kind of am more of a SME is in product data. I do know Aces obviously comes with the career and the job, but I'm really an advocate for Pies, and Pies is everything to do with product. That is everything that has to do with enriching the product, enriching the user experience. It's going to have your part types. It's going to have your pricing data. It's going to have your digital assets, whether that's videos, PDFs, 360s. It's going to have your UPC information, your G10 information. It also has all that volumetric data you need to have to optimize your supply chain to make sure that you're putting stuff in the right box, you're getting the right shipping based off the weight. Can that stuff actually be shipped to that state is another one. Like I can't ship an aftermarket exhaust to California because they have high carb laws. I can't do that. The other one is So that's where I live. So that's the product data, and that's what the Technology Standards Committee, if you don't know, so we're going to treat this like as if nobody knows.
Treat it like there, we're talking to aliens.
Yeah, so the ACES and PI standard is governed by the Auto Care Association. Auto Care Association is a non-for-profit company. They are just here as a driver. They do a lot of lobbying on the Capitol Hill for our industry, as well as they do have the data standards. But within the Auto Care Association, there is a committee, and that committee is the Technology Standards Committee. I sit on that committee. The Technology Standards Committee is, again, a group of volunteers that are like industry leaders in our industry. It varies from retailers to software solutions to manufacturers as to what our background is, but we all come together and we kind of put who we are or who we work for on the table, and we just focus on making the standard better. And they are actually the drivers that get projects and move the backlog of what needs to be done to improve ACES and PIs. So if you guys have feedback on ACES and PIs, please reach out to me, but you also can do that on AutoCare VIP, because that's where all the changes are happening, and that's where how the standard is managed. It's not by a company that's making profit.
Yeah, let me ask you this, Sam. So when we start to think about that, there's a lot of manufacturers. So typically, I always look at, like, say, a manufacturer as small, mid, large enterprise, right? Typically, large enterprise, they have resources, budget, right? They're much in a larger segment. When you look at, like, and I see it all the time, the smaller the manufacturer, the more they struggle with data. Where do you think because data is king, right? If you
data is the new oil.
It's oil, man. And if you don't have it, well, just go do something else, right? And I've been seeing this for years, just around this. I mean, if I was a part of a manufacturer, man, I would be so hyper focused on my data, because I mean, just look at kind of the emergence of some of online e-tailers, and we're seeing that kind of evolve. We're watching technicians age out, new technicians come in, right? And people are very, very much more savvy. And I think automotive is behind, to be perfectly honest. But if you have like that small kind of mid-sized manufacturer that historically they've always been focused on manufacturing their kind of niche products or whatever, where do they start? If we know that PIs is the most important, and obviously fitment as well, the ACES side, well, where do they start? What would be like your recommendation on, like, where do you start? You just start with one SKU?
I mean, yeah, the first thing you need to know is where your data is coming from. You'd be surprised, like, throughout my career, where I've talked to some brands and they don't know where their data is being managed, or who's controlling it, or where it's coming from. So the first thing is like a company. So let's take it as, so I did work for, like, I would say like a mid manufacturer. I was their data manager. I implemented ACES and PIs and got them to like platinum status with SEMA. So we'll use that as an example.
Okay.
So I was the data manager at Amex ADA. Shout out Amex ADA. They own Rugged Ridge and all of that. They're owned by Truck Hero and Real Truck now. So when I was there, we managed all our data in Excel, which is perfectly fine. If that works for your business, we had about like 1,200 SKUs. That was perfectly manageable to manage in Excel. Granted, it was like a fully built, formulated Excel sheet, perfectly fine. But I knew where all the data, and the key to this is knowing that your data is managed in one place.
Yeah.
You don't want it in everybody's emails. It doesn't need to be on your hard drive, my hard drive, because what happens is if you're not managing in one place, even if it's just Excel, it's not going to have integrity, it's not going to have quality, and you're not going to know whether you have the latest data, because it could be being managed in multiple places. So that's step one. So like if you're just like me and you, and you're watching this and you're like, oh, I really want to make sure our data's like, especially like the e-commerce like category guys, like the guys that aren't the data nerds, they're like trying to understand, why can't I sell more products? So I'm going to tell you, you need to find out who's managing your data, who owns it. It's probably a data analyst and somebody that's got the title catalog in their name. That's where you can start, right? So then after that, then you want to make sure that your data is like streamlined and headless. And when I say that is like, so we know you have like certain things that you have to have. You have to have a part number, you have to have a product description, pricing, and maybe some kind of description, right? That's about all you necessarily have. You and I know that if you actually want a successful customer journey, that's probably not all you need, but you want it to be headless. So don't have a bunch of data, or what one of my colleagues calls attribute stuffing. Don't attribute stuff a field, because then I can't parse it, I can't find it, So
when you say attribute stuffing, is that like just fill in the blank with something?
It's like when you go, I like throwing Amazon on the bus. So when you go to Amazon, you look at their product titles. You go to Amazon, you look at their product titles, and it's like 300 characters or more. But then it's just like, it's like reading a paragraph, and it's all they've done is attribute stuffed. So like they'll do like,
yes.
What's a good example of this?
They take a bunch of different columns, they stuff it into one, and there it is.
Stuff it into one, and they do that. And they do that because it optimizes SEO, but then it's like really shitty user experience. So like, cause you have to sit there when I go to like shop for something, I'll have to trying to figure out what size it is or how long it is. And so then I'm like looking in the title, trying to find where it's at. But that's attribute stuffing. That's a big no-no that we do here when we do a taxonomy deep dive to look at whether it's your web taxonomy or your internal taxonomy, is if you're attribute stuffing your taxonomy instead of just saying it's a light bulb. But it's getting your data in a state that is headless and clean and structured. Doesn't have to be in a fancy MDM. I would highly recommend getting an MDM or a PIM system if you're going into doing aces and pies. If you're not doing it today and you're just doing Excel, is getting yourself into one of those off-the-shelf PIM or MDMs that are playing in automotive. And we all know who those players are. If you don't, please come to Connect, because I'm pretty sure they're all there this year.
Yeah.
Where they've already built that. I wouldn't recommend building it yourself, although depending on what the lift is in your data and how much data you have, you could build it yourself. But that's where I've started, Gideon, is you've got to know that where your data is, make sure that it's being managed in one place so you have a true data master, and then start looking at, do I need a better house for my data, or is the house I have okay and I need to leverage a partner like Pivotree or a partner like anyone else that can help me get that mapping to aces and pies and getting my data into these retailers.
Yeah, talk to us about Pivotree. I actually, maybe it's just dumb of me, but I didn't realize until you actually walk us through what Pivotree does. Like, where do y'all just get where
do we play?
Yeah, where do y'all play?
So if you have crappy data, we really want to play with you. Nobody wants to play in the data. Man, I thought I was like the data. Yeah. So the pitch I have, and I'm working on it and working on honing it, is, so the example I have, and it's always going to go back to racing, right? So Pivotree, if you actually look at F1, so if we take our industry and compare it to F1 Formula One racing. So Formula One racing, F1 vehicles, like the one behind me, is heavily regulated. They're heavily regulated vehicles. They all basically have the same thing because they want to make the race equal as possible. Now, there are slight modifications that the engineers can do to make their car run a little bit faster, run longer, be more aerodynamic, but they all basically have the same components. So when I look at the industry and compare it to F1, majority of us have a PIM system, a product information management system, or some way that we're managing our data today. We have a WMS, which is going to be your warehouse management system. We may have an inventory management system, and then majority of us have an e-commerce platform, whether it's homegrown or whether we're just using something off the shelf just to say that we have an e-commerce presence. It doesn't matter. So we all kind of have those same elements. We kind of went through that digital implementation of everybody kind of has those elements now. So then it's okay, what makes me different? So what makes you different is, in F1, it's not the driver that is a factor, and it's not the car. What's actually the differentiator of whether you win or lose the race is your pit crew. You will look into this and find the most streamlined, owner-driven, quick, fastest pit crews are the ones that are the differentiator whether that driver wins the race or not. And it can be down to milliseconds. And so what I tell people is, in a world of an industry where everyone kind of has the same tools and instruments in their toolkit, Pivotree is that differentiator. We are the pit crew that comes in. We tweak things that need to be tweaked. We leave you with a clean house. We implement best practices. We tell you the experiences that we've had, and then we help you win the race. So we are the differentiator in this competitive race of e-commerce, essentially.
That's an interesting way of putting it. I really like that. In my head, it just kind of, the light bulb went off.
Yeah, so I usually say it better than that, but that's
good.
What it is. That's why we're Pivotree is that pit crew. So we're the differentiator in the race where everybody kind of has the same race car, but now down to how you tweak and tune that race car that gets you that customer satisfaction and that loyalty and that
Which
success.
it all correlates to conversion. It's all correlates back to conversion because the demand is there, right? It's the demand. We have the vehicles in operation. We know high failure rates, right? The demand is already there. It's basically how are you differentiating yourself to compete that it puts you just right ahead of the curve from basically a competitor at the end of the day.
And what we're looking at today is, we went from big data 10 years ago, and now everybody's talking about AI, right? Like AI has been around for a while, but now it's ever since we made it public, it's, everybody's acting like it's brand new. But I will tell you right now, if you're looking at AI and that's what your leadership's focusing on and not focusing on your foundational data issues, you're going to spend a lot of money to realize that your data is a problem.
I have said that even the last few years I've actually said this. And I'm actually curious to your opinion. How much of AI is kind of like a buzzword? Like I've sat in a lot of presentations where it was like AI, but I took nothing away from it. Like,
yeah,
I was
have
just like,
noticed that one.
I totally get it. Like I get it. Like, hello, I got it. AI, artificial intelligence. If you're not using it, machine learning, ChatGPT. Okay, in 2 weeks, they had 20 million users or whatever the number was. But I struggled to take something away from it. Like, how do you deploy it? Like, you know what I'm saying? But I think you're right. I think you're dead on. I think if the core of your data issues are still there, who cares about AI?
If you don't have quality, trustworthy data, then it's going to be, I forget what they call it. I always forget. I need to remember, but it's like when an AI tells you something false, it's like, it's a false result.
A lie.
Yeah. It's basically lying because AI, all it is numbers and algorithms. So whatever you feed it, it will tell you whatever you want. This is great. Also, that's why I always tell people when I do those AI talks, I'm always like, trust but verify. Leverage AI.
Yeah.
Do not just blindly think that it's accurate unless you really know what you're talking about. Because then I'll see the results and I'll be like, no, that's not right. And so I'll have an argument with it, and then it'll get it right. But yeah, it's just a large language model that's constantly being fed by everyone. So, but I am a big proponent of AI. I have so many ideas and thoughts around how AI can be used in automotive when it comes from end to end. Whether it's data management, whether it's supply chain, whether it's giving that personal touch in commerce, or whether it's the shop owners in the techs. I'm unique in my perspective because of my experience, but also because my husband owns a shop. So I'm constantly let's fix it.
you were saying before we came on, you were a big racer. I
was. Yeah, I was. And then I had a really bad accident. And then ever since then, it's like, you're like, yeah, I'm good. But my husband still does it to the day. You'll see me out at the track. I'm like the designated track wife. I'm at the track. Everybody knows who I am.
I got the oranges.
But now they know who I am because of those videos. Now they know when I'm at the track, I'm filming some video for LinkedIn. But yeah, I'm like the track wife now.
I've always been scared of speed. I find it so funny that I'm in this industry. Speed has always scared me for some reason. I don't know. I don't know. I like even my wife yells at me because I go too slow. Like, honey, we're gonna get there safe.
Get there safe. I'm not. I have the personality for it though. I'm like, if you take the DISC assessment, surprise everybody. I'm a heavy D, like almost off the chart D. So I'm very good at just making decisions, which is ironic because I came from being a data analyst where it's like, I need to know the numbers and they need to be right.
I'd say you're an outlier from a data person.
Yeah. So people are look at me and they're like,
I was telling Courtney Pedler, shout out to Autoology, Data Group Management. And Sam's coming on. She was all excited. She was all fired up. She goes, no way. We're gonna see her in 2 weeks.
We love each other. Yeah, it's unfortunate. If you go back to ACPN, so I'm got 2 sessions. I mean, technically 3 if you look at the State of the Standard. State of the Standard sessions on Wednesday. Shout out. That is the open committee, Technology Standards Committee. So if you have any kind of complaints, please just crash that party. But then also on Tuesdays, all the breakouts, if you haven't really heavily looked at the schedule, I have heavily looked at the schedule.
I've looked at it I've looked at it
all the breakouts are on Tuesday. Okay. And then our little expo sessions on Monday. Monday's a little bit more chill. Tuesday is the one where it's just constant overlapping sessions. And so unfortunately, I'm doing an awesome session. I am doing tips on taxonomy. So, and I get to do that with the keynote, the classification guru. So that's also one where we kind of dive into how you can, what's the difference between internal and external taxonomy, how you can identify if you need to revamp your taxonomy. We go over attribute stuffing. We also go over isness and what the product is. And then we are doing something in that session. It's Battles of the Taxos, where we have ranked the retailers on their taxonomies and where they're at in the maturity of their taxonomy. So that's a fun session. So I'm excited about that one.
Yeah. Yeah. So if I've got a few folks I know that are going. So what did they? I've looked at the schedule. They just look for Sam Russo wherever she's talking.
Okay. No, on that one, it's actually the data crew chief. Where am I at?
Data
right
crew
there.
chief.
Yeah, so it's the classification guru, data crew chief. But I'd say I'm sad about that one because Courtney's this year, because it's 4 conferences coming into one, we're overlapping. So she's doing the ACEs. I forget what the title is, but it's definitely ACEs, focused on ACEs because she's more like the ACEs queen.
Oh yeah.
But it has the title has Goat Rodeo in it.
ACEs queen. Goat Rodeo.
Yeah, so we're unfortunately gonna have to miss each other's session.
These are like to get like the ACEs queen, like to get that that title. Like 99.99% of the world doesn't give a shit.
No,
but in our industry, it's like the crown.
You don't understand the red badge of honor that we have crawled through the mud and dealt with so much crap for us to be like.
And no,
listen,
that's what I think I love most is that nobody really cares, but we care. We care.
And that's why we're so excited about Connect, because it's like the one time where we feel important because we're like the superstars. We walk around and we're like,
everybody comes out. Sorry, out of the cobwebs all year for this thing, and
yeah, here. I'm like, it's like the Super Bowl, and then we go to Apex and SEMA in the fall, and it's not quite the same because this one's like very much smaller than SEMA Apex. So this is like the one where it's like a high school reunion every year, and we all come together and we like high five, and then
it's the
same people. But then we see like the new people that are coming in.
Yeah.
Like I know I like look at the registration list to be like, who's coming? Like who's coming? Yeah. And so like we've got like the MDM platforms are coming this year, which is exciting. But then like I saw like an OEM on the list. I was like, ooh, the OEs are coming to our little conference.
Well, I was like, data's important.
Yeah. It is.
They're sniffing around our dinner table.
I do know that I've heard rumors of the OEMs where I sit now are looking at aces and pies. What they're looking to do with it, I don't know, but we'll see.
Well, I've said this for many years that I think that there's going to be a time where, you know, OEs in the aftermarket, because at the end of the day, the parts that are being manufactured are all dotted line to an aftermarket label anyways. Yes. And I really think it's going to become closer together. And I think we have to. I think the digital era, I think it makes so much sense because it's like if you look at the statistics from a dealership, when a vehicle goes out of warranty, the percentage of losing that customer is like 98%. Like he's gone. Yeah. They're gone. Like goodbye, right? And the smart technicians know who makes the OE. I mean, if you're in the industry, you just you figure out, okay, who's actually made it's the same product, right? But I've said this for a long time. I think that we're better together from a parts industry perspective, but everyone has their own opinion.
It's ironic you say that because I have a whole soapbox on this, and it's like I take every opportunity to talk about it because I think, and I'll do the soapbox right now if that's okay. So, in the industry today, yeah, I know. In the industry today, it's owning a vehicle is very frictionful. In an industry where we want everything right now, right here, right now, owning a vehicle is very frictionful. Like when you go out to your car and all of a sudden you go to start it and you're like, click, 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 click. It's usually at the worst time possible, right? Like it's when you're going on vacation, you're late to a doctor's appointment, your kid has to get to school. And so then you go to instant stress. And in today's world, whether you have a smart vehicle or even a normal vehicle, I say normal vehicle, but it's more like I have like a Toyota 4Runner, so it's a normal vehicle to me because it's not smart driven. So like you panic. And so what do? You pull out your phone and you start Googling what could it be? And unless you actually know, like if it's making a clicking noise, then you know that it's probably your starter. If it's not making any noise at all, then it's probably your alternator. But if you don't know that, you start Googling it. So you look on your phone, you start Googling it, and what that results in is you either go to different forums, trying to understand what it is. Once after like 30 or 40 minutes, then you start saying, okay, I figured out what I think it is. And if you're a DIYer, then you're going to go on a different journey. You're going to start Googling where you can get the parts. And in today's world, that's another hour because you're going to start Googling and clicking through the different retailers of where the parts are to see who can get it to you today, where can I pick it up, and how much is it? Usually in this industry, it's who can I get it quicker to will trump the price, but that's what you start doing. So that's about 2 hours of your life. Now, the other side of that is if you're a do it for me, means like you don't work on your car, you don't know how to do that, that's fine, right? You start doing the same thing. You start looking at shops that are around you, except in today's world, you have to call those shops to see if they can take you in today. So now you're going to spend an hour of your time calling around to different shops to see if they can take in your vehicle today. And that's if they have the parts on the shelf and can actually get the parts today. So that's another hour of your time. Whereas we have all these different solutions to redefine how a owner interacts with their vehicle, whether it's from a data driven that's coming off the vehicle. So you use companies like Preddy who are taking all that data coming off the vehicle to try and utilize that in a positive way to be able to predict when a part's going to fail, right? Like what if I knew that my fuel pump was about to fail on my 18-wheeler before I went to go across the country to do that transport? Like that's huge impact on the heavy duty industry. So what if I use those AI driven things to then create a chat bot? So I have a whole article on this, which is like, what if instead when my car's like broken, there was like a chat bot or an ecosystem or something like that, where I went in there and I started asking questions. I was like, hey, my car won't start. Now, generative AI, normal generative AI, when you start typing that in, you can try it. It's kind of like saying you have a headache on WebMD and it says you're dying. So maybe not do that. But if you go to a large language model that's fed by automotive data, it's built and fed by automotive technicians, and you start talking with that, it'll sound like you're talking to a senior technician. So if I go into this, I'm visualizing this. If I go into like this app or whatever, and I say, hey, my car won't start, generative AI will be like, well, however you want it to be nice, I just say, well, that sucks. What is it doing? And you start saying, I go to start it and it's making a clicking noise. Or even better, I like the brake example. So like when I go to stop at a stop sign, it's making a squealing noise. And then it'll be like, okay, where do you hear the noise? Is it in the front? Is it in the back? It's in the front. Does it sound like it's on the driver's side? Does it do it while you're driving? Or is it only when you're coming to a stop, right? If it's only when you're coming to stop, then it'll go into being like, sounds like you might need to replace your brakes, may need to replace your rotors, right? Then the prompt could go, would you like me to schedule a service for you at your local service shop? And I'll go, yes, I would, because that would be awesome for me. Thank you. And then it'll pop up the local service shops that are around your area that have open availability, and you can schedule it during your time when you want to bring it in. And then that goes to that shop, and that shop's alerted that something has been scheduled, right? And then you do the follow-up due diligence. Now, there are some red flags in this because the shops don't want to just have reservations that don't show up. But this is the kind of ecosystem, frictionless ecosystem, that I see would really transform the industry. But that goes back to yours, Gideon, where these things exist today. Like if I go Google these different elements of this one ecosystem, they exist today. The dealers have their own app. The OEs have their own app for you to track your maintenance. And some of the shops do. Then you have places like Repair Pal who are like sourcing shops nearby. These elements all work today. So we're not building them. Even the marketplaces exist today. Like off-the-shelf marketplaces that exist today that could be leveraging AI, leveraging this customer-driven data to then give this ecosystem this personalized touch. Because I think what everybody wants is they want the personalized touch, but in a digital format. So when you're back in the day when we used to go up to the local automotive shop, and Ted behind the counter that's been there forever knows my kids, knows where my kids go to school, how they play, knows the vehicles I drive, the maintenance I've had. And he's just like, oh, Sam, you probably need new wiper blades or whatever, right? And you're like, yeah, that's exactly what I need, right? They want that personalized touch, but we want it behind on our phones. So we want the personalized touch, but we want it on our phones. And the one way that you can really build that customer journey and that secret sauce of how your company is servicing your customer is through data. You have to have the data from all the different data sources to drive that personal journey and to leverage AI to create that personal journey for your consumers. And that's my soapbox.
What a like, I just went through that experience in my head with you. Like, I was driving a car. What a great experience. Like, my car broke down, boom, and it just connected. It kind of gave me the idea of that, like, you know, when you go into the doctor says, all these things are wrong with you. And then they just shoot out all these prescriptions to your preferred places and it's done. You just pick it up and you're off and running. Like, I know that sounds like a stupid example, but
it doesn't.
It's kind of a, like, I go down and they're like, yeah, it's mental problems. Okay, I need medicine. They give you medicine and they drop it off. I just swoop in, I pick it up and I'm off and running. Like it's
I actually have compared the vehicle industry to the medical industry. And if anybody on here has the answer to this, please tell me, because I just don't know. Because I'm wondering why we don't drive the vehicle industry or your vehicle and tie everything to your VIN. So VIN here in North America is unique to the vehicle the same way a social security number is unique to us. So why does maintenance records, maintenance history not travel with the VIN of the vehicle?
Yeah, so you sell your vehicle and it doesn't matter.
So you can
all the records.
You sell your vehicle. You no longer have to have that spiral notepad where you've written down every maintenance that you've ever done and pass it on to the new owner. You now just the information. I think it would have to involve the Department of Transportation is probably the main caveat here. 100%, but it would have to travel with that.
It's like an EMR. It's like
but you do it. It does exist because, like in CarMax, like if I get in an accident and I report it to insurance, it shows up on my Carfax. So why couldn't, if I go get an oil change and they type in my VIN into the whatever software solution they're using in the shop, why does that not just go back to the internal database like Carfax and says they got an oil change on April 23rd, 2024?
Yeah, it doesn't matter who the owner is.
I don't understand why that doesn't exist. I'm sure there's a reason.
Irrelevant.
Yeah, because you can. So like if I go to sell my 4Runner today and we had all this information stored somewhere and it was like stored to a customer, so that way the shops around me could have a personal touch and target me. But as soon as I sell that vehicle and I relinquish it, all the personal data can come out of it. All I need to know is like it had an oil change here, it did this. And I've talked to my husband about this. Like I was like, imagine if somebody came into your shop and you were just like, hey, let's hypothetically say it's an app that's doing this. Are you part of AutoNexa, right? And they're like, yes, I am. And then he's like, okay, great. And he types in your VIN on AutoNexa and it automatically brings up the history of the patient. But in this instance, it's a vehicle. And he instantly has the history of the vehicle. I don't know why that doesn't exist. I'm sure there's reasons. So if anybody understands why that doesn't exist, please tell me so that way I can move on. But
that's a good idea though. That's a good startup.
There's ways that you could do. Yeah, you got to have access to it. Now, there's ways that you can do it within your ecosystem, meaning like Napa or like O'Reilly's. O'Reilly's is really good on this one because they have My Garage. So it's kind of like you log in as a B2C and you have My Garage and you put in your year, make, model today. But like, what if you put in your VIN and then you just have it? But my issue with that is that it's still siloed. Like I want to make it like a playing field for everyone. Whether the OEs then get visibility into their fleet that's out, their vehicles on the road and how they're being maintained, what's failing, blah, blah, blah.
Well, I was going to say failure.
But I can't figure out, because it's not the privacy, because I could completely take out of who owns it. Like I'm an advocate that
you strip it.
That registration or vehicle data that's on the road is not proprietary. It's not private, but who owns it is private. The vehicle itself is not private. Who owns it is private. That's where it's like you knowing that I own my Toyota 4Runner is private and where I live and all that. But what's been done to that 4Runner is argumentatively not necessary to be private. Like knowing that I maintain it every 5,000 miles, that it went in and had an oil change on this day. It's had 5 oil changes.
It's kind of like the journey of the vehicle, right? Like that vehicle has a life of its own. It goes from owner to owner. It's almost like an orphan, but that orphan has it's got its own story, you know? Like
And I just haven't figured out, nobody's been able to tell me, and I assume it has to do with the government, to be honest, why we aren't, because we tag insurance claims, crashes, and stuff like that. Like, I can put in a Carfax on a vehicle and see one crazy vehicle that we literally own today is a lemon Subaru STI that's had a rough life. And I know that because I've looked at the Carfax, and it got lemoned, and you like scroll down and it literally got like shotgunned on the side down it. But like I can see stuff like that, but I can't see when it's had like oil changes or it's had its 60,000 miles and it's had spark plugs changed and all these things. I can't see that. I have to rely on the owner.
What you did see when it got shot up.
Yeah. So I'm like, it exists at a level. So what would it take to get it to the next level?
Well, you'd have to have shop management systems that are all plugged into this. Because if I go in to get my oil change at a, Johnny's Lube and Tire, that information has to work back into that one source of truth.
Yeah, it has to feed back into that.
And I don't know because they're not, how many times you go in and get an oil change, right? And you're like, well, I got to proceed.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's like, it almost feeds back farther than that. Like if it's like S&P Global, who's like controller of the VIN data, if they start funneling it back, but that's where it's like, I'm just frustrated because I'm like, we have all the elements.
Yeah, I think it's just fragmentation, right? How many independent LLC independent shops are there in just the US? Well, there's quite a few. So all of them have to be on a universal platform that connects their shop management. It becomes a little bit of a monopoly, right? Because now you don't have the ability to go select what shop management system you're on. If you know what I mean, they all have to map back to the single source of truth, which that would be like Carfax. I don't know where that information funnels into.
Yeah,
but it has to be a universal one platform that reads all that information.
Yeah, but it's almost like Pivotree actually has a customer that's in the industrial off-highway space, let's say. And they're trying to do this. They would be the equivalent of an OE in an industrial off-highway space.
Yeah, almost owning that.
They want to get visibility into their fleet or the equipment that's out there in the world and understand so that way they can interact with those customers to tell them when something's going to fail. So they can either put them in place with a dealer that's nearby, the parts. Basically, they're trying to, sustainability is more than just that, but sustainability is keeping the vehicles that are on the road today so that we don't have to be scrapping them. And the same thing does that. But they're trying to create that ecosystem where there's like a connectivity where this manufacturer is the center of it. But they have like access to the dealers and the dealer network and who's interacting with the dealers, access to the customers that own the equipment, but also access to the products and inventory to understand the products that are developed. It's like a whole ecosystem in like marketplace.
It's kind of it's a little bit like the right to repair. The right to repair is the
huge. It's huge.
Data, right? And it's interesting. It's interesting. I think it's simple and like the visualization and talking about it, but there has to be one single source of truth.
There does, and that all goes back to data and aces and pies and all that.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you know what, Sam? I know we're coming up here on time, but if anybody is looking and struggling around their data, how do they holler at where'd you get the nickname Big Hat Girl? I actually meant to ask you that earlier.
I have multiple nicknames. I have, like for a while I was like the motor oil queen.
Motor oil queen. Damn. You guys have badges of honor.
Yeah, it's like a little red badge of honor though. So I have motor oil. I'm really close with all the motor oil companies. I love that industry. I love the motor oil industry. I went to a lot of conferences in the base oil. It's crazy. But then like a year ago, I just decided to wear the giant Napa hat as a joke to my leadership that was there. I was going to wear it down to registration just as a joke because they gave them out at like a town hall. And then I ended up not being able to take it off the entire time, which was great. It took on a whole life of its own that I never could have foreseen at all. Yeah. And so now it's just like, now I'm just like big, I call it hashtag big hat energy. So I have like 3 big hats right now. I do have an exciting unveiling of another hat that is happening at Connect Week that I'm excited to bring. But yeah, so I have 3 big hats, but now I also have, I don't know if you've seen this, Gideon. I have the digital backpack, the LED backpack. that I wear.
I did.
Yeah, so it's an LED backpack. It changes things while I'm walking around. It's like a billboard. I will be giving one of those away at Connect if you come by the booth. So I end up being like the bag girl. I don't know which title's worse, the big hat girl, the bag girl. And then now I'm starting to get glasses. And then the data crew chief thing actually came from because I became friends with some keynotes, and they're like, so I became friends with the data whisperer and the classification guru, who have both been keynotes at Connect. And they're like, you need a name. And they're like, you're kind of like the maestro of automotive data. They're like, let's do data crew chief, because then it goes back to all of that F1 reference that I do in all the racing. So I was like, yeah, that works. So now I'm data crew chief. Hopefully that stays.
How do people listening, how do they get in touch with? I mean, if they need you're obviously a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of knowledge, and it goes deep. I mean, you've been in this game for a long time. How do they get in touch with you? Call you?
So you can reach me directly at LinkedIn if you want to. Because I'm very much on LinkedIn. But this may be a bold move, but you can also just text me if you want to. So my number is 678-315-0337. And if you want to just text me, you can totally just text me. You can also find me through email as well.
She's married, guys. Don't just
listen, it's easy to block.
Yeah.
And no.
Oh, that is great. Well, I will tell you what, Sam, it has been absolutely a joy. And I look forward to seeing you out in Chicago. I was thinking about hitting up a Wrigley game, a Cubs game too, one night. So I don't know what everyone's up to, but if anyone's listening and they're going to be at Connect and you want to go to a Cubs game, I might buy you a ticket.
That sounds exciting. I don't know.
Yeah, never been to Wrigley Field.
What night are you going?
I don't know yet.
We have the Yang dinner. Hot plug for Yang. Yang dinner on Sunday night. Monday night, I'm a little bit free animal right now. I say right now.
Yeah.
And then Tuesday night, I have a dinner, and then I fly out Wednesday evening.
Right on. We'll figure it out. Well, I will say this, folks. It has been absolutely an honor to have Sam Russo, the data crew chief, big hat girl. I can't remember all the nicknames.
Bad girl.
Absolutely bad. Yeah, there you go. It's really an honor to have her on. Just a wealth of knowledge and the industry experience that comes on to share with our listeners. I also will say, R.I.P. Lucas Welk. He got stung by a bunch of bees. I think he got in a fight. But we got to come back to this. So I got to figure out what happened to him. He went R.I.P. But regardless, folks, it is absolutely exciting times in the industry. If you are not sure about data, if you are absolutely a lost goat on the pasture, Sam Russo is absolutely a massive value to not only you, the industry, but she can put you down the right path. I think if you just looked at her LinkedIn, she's had almost every job in this industry that relates to data. And I will say this, she continues to lead forward and absolutely an innovator in where we're at. It's an exciting time in the future. So I just want to say, Sam, thank you so much for committing your time to the Auto Trends podcast, and let us know if we ever could help in any way with you. And we appreciate it.
Thanks, Gideon. I had fun.
You got it.